Hello students, welcome to this lecture 1.1, the physical geography of Africa. In this lecture we will talk about Africa, its size and location, the different climatic zones in Africa, and we will finish with Africa as the birthplace of humankind, as well as the place of origins of all African Americans. First of all, with regard to its size and location, Africa is a huge continent. It is actually the second largest continent in the world, just after Asia. It is surrounded by bodies of water. In the north, you have the Mediterranean Sea. In the west, you have the Atlantic Ocean. And in the east, you have the Red Sea as well as the Indian Ocean. The equator and the two tropics, Tropic of Cancer as well as the Tropic of Capricorn, also cut across Africa. This map shows us the location of Africa vis-a-vis the bodies of water. First, in the east, over here you have the Indian Ocean as well as the Red Sea. That's this small body of water. In the north you have the Mediterranean Sea, and in the west you have the Atlantic Ocean. We also talk about the equator, which divide Africa in two parts. So Africa is at the same time a northern continent and a southern continent, because the equator divide the whole world into northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. The Tropic of Capricorn cuts across Africa in the south, and the Tropic of Cancer cuts also Africa in the north. With regard to the different climatic zones in Africa, so these are zones based on the prevailing climate in the area. So Africa can be divided into four different climatic zones. Other people may find more than that, but these are the main climatic zones in Africa. First, you have the deserts. Then you have savanna, and savanna. Africa is actually covered by this so-called savanna for the most part. And then you have the rainforest and the mountain ranges. This map shows us that Africa is mostly a flat land. The only area where you have mountains. The mountain ranges in Africa are located in the eastern parts, in the countries of Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. So that's the only place where you have high mountains in Africa. But for the most part, Africa is flat or a plateau. That's flat land in elevation. So that's in the southern parts of Africa. This map shows us the different climatic zones. You have different shades of color here, but the most important for us are the brown area. So that's the deserts in the north, the Sahara deserts in the north here, and the Kalahari desert in the south, just a small part of the south in Namibia and South Africa. So those are the two places with deserts in Africa. And like I said earlier, Africa is mostly covered by grass. These grass they are called savanna. So for the most part, Africa is covered by savanna. Sometimes you have a few trees on them, sometimes you don't. But these two shades of green, those are the savanna area in Africa. And we can see them in West Africa over here, in Central Africa, as well as in the southern and eastern part of Africa. Everywhere you have savanna in Africa. So that's tall grass, sometimes with trees, sometimes without trees. The last part, last climatic zone that we have to talk about is the rainforest. As you know, rainforest means dense forest with tall, very tall trees, and dense. So that's limited in this area surrounding the equator. And many people have actually a wrong idea about Africa. They think that Africa is covered by rainforest, forest everywhere, but that's not true. Africa is actually mostly covered by deserts and savanna, but the rainforest is just limited in this area in West Africa around the equator. So that's the physical geography of Africa in terms of its history, and we will continue this on the next lecture. But for now, let me just tell you that Africa is actually the birthplace of humanity. All human beings actually came from Africa. This is based on evidence, based on the available evidence that allows scientists to conclude that Africa is the birthplace of humanity. But for the sake of this history, Africa is the birthplace, it's the place of origins of all African Americans. And this is why we have to start with Africa in this African American history. So please continue to lecture 1.2 to continue just module 1.